The galactic archives stretched across an entire moon. Thousands of kilometers of crystalline data cores hummed with quantum energy. Every piece of information ever recorded by the Federation was stored here. Historical records spanning 10,000 years, scientific discoveries from 1,000 civilizations, literature from countless worlds, all preserved in perfect digital format, accessible instantly from anywhere in the galaxy. At the heart of this vast repository of knowledge sat a small anomaly. A single room that looked like it belonged in another century. Wooden shelves lined the walls. Physical books filled those shelves. Books made of paper, bound in leather and cloth, smelling of age and dust. This was the Human Heritage Collection, and its sole curator was librarian James Chen. James ran his fingers along the spines of books on the nearest shelf, each one a relic from Earth, preserved through centuries of space travel, maintained by human archivists who refused to let these physical objects disappear into pure data. The collection included first editions of classic literature, historical documents, scientific treatises, maps, journals, even children's books, to most of the galaxy. The collection was a quaint museum piece, an example of how primitive humans had stored information before discovering better methods. Visitors would occasionally stop by. They would look at the books with the same bemused curiosity they might show toward stone tablets or clay pots. Director Kelvin, the Valorian who oversaw the entire galactic archives, made his opinion clear during their weekly meetings. Librarian Chen, Kelvin's translucent blue form shimmered with barely concealed impatience. I must again request that you allow us to digitize the Human Heritage Collection. We could scan every book, preserve the information perfectly, and reclaim this valuable space for additional quantum storage cores. James adjusted his old-fashioned reading glasses. Affectation. Really, his vision was perfect, but the glasses reminded him of his grandfather, who had been a librarian on Earth, who had taught James that some things should never be purely digital. Director, we have had this conversation 17 times now. My answer remains the same. These books are not just information storage devices. They are cultural artifacts, historical objects. They have value beyond their content, but the content is what matters. Kelvin gestured at the shelves with one translucent appendage. Everything in these books is already in our digital archives, scanned and indexed centuries ago. These physical objects are redundant, inefficient, and frankly, a waste of resources. They are backup, James said quietly. In case the digital systems fail. Kelvin's form rippled with what might have been laughter. Fail? Librarian Chen, the galactic archives are built on quantum crystalline storage, with 17 layers of redundancy, backed up across 43 different locations throughout the Federation, protected by the most advanced error correction algorithms ever developed. The likelihood of catastrophic data loss is approximately 1 in 10 to the 18th power. The physical universe will end before our archives fail. Nevertheless, the books stay. You are impossibly stubborn. I prefer to think of it as properly cautious. Kelvin's form flickered with frustration. Very well, but I want it noted in the official records that I continue to object to this waste of resources. This room could house 3 additional quantum cores, expanding our storage capacity by 0.004%. Noted, as always. After Kelvin left, James returned to his work. He was cataloging a recent donation, a collection of Earth's ancient maps, printed on paper, showing coastlines as they had been before climate engineering, cities that no longer existed, borders long since dissolved. His assistant, Zara, a young Centauri with multifaceted eyes and pale green skin, watched him work with puzzlement. She had been assigned to the Human Heritage Collection as part of her archival training. She found the entire concept of physical books baffling. Librarian Chen, she asked, why do you spend so much time on these objects? I scanned this entire map collection yesterday. It took 14 seconds. All the information is now in the digital archives. Searchable, analyzable. Why do you still need to handle the originals? James carefully unrolled an old map of the Pacific Ocean. He pointed to a small notation in the corner, handwritten in faded ink. Do you see this note? Zara leaned closer, her compound eyes examining the tiny script. It says, "Dragons be here. Father said there are none, but I remain hopeful." This map was made in 1823 by a human child who wanted to be an explorer. That handwritten note, that personal touch, it tells us something about the person who made this map, about their dreams and hopes, about their relationship with their father. Your scanner captured the words, but did it capture the meaning? The words are the meaning, are they? Look at the ink, how it faded in some places, how the hand that wrote it pressed harder on some letters than others. See this small water stain? This map was carried on a voyage, used, treasured. Every mark tells a story. Your scan gives us data, but the object gives us context, connection, history. Zara looked thoughtful. I never considered that. In Zentari culture, we have always stored information in crystalline matrices. We have no tradition of physical books. Perhaps I cannot fully understand what you see in these objects. Perhaps. Or perhaps you just need to spend more time with them. Here, he handed her an old leather-bound book. This is a collection of earth poetry from the 21st century. Read it, not on a screen. Read the physical book. Feel the pages. Smell the paper. See if the experience is different. Zara took the book hesitantly, as if it might break. She opened it. Carefully, her multifaceted eyes scanned the first page. Then something changed in her expression. She turned the page. Then another. She was not just reading, she was experiencing. It is different, she said softly. I do not know why, but it is. James smiled. That is why we preserve them. The weeks passed. James continued his quiet work, maintaining the collection, cataloging new acquisitions, teaching Zara about the care and preservation of physical media. Visitors to the Human Heritage Collection were rare. Most researchers preferred the convenience of digital access. Why physically visit the archives when you could access any information instantly from anywhere in the galaxy? But occasionally, someone would come, usually a human, sometimes another species interested in Earth culture. They would browse the shelves, handle the books carefully, sit in the reading room with its antique wooden furniture, and experience information in a way that had become rare in the galaxy. One such visitor was Professor Thel, an elderly Krathian historian. He had been studying human history for 60 years. He visited the collection once every few months to consult original sources for his research. Librarian Chen. Professor Thel's gray scales had dulled with age, but his eyes remained sharp. I am researching the early colonial period. Do you have any personal journals from the first Mars settlements? I do. Follow me. James led the professor to a climate-controlled section. He pulled out a box containing 3 journals, handwritten, nearly 400 years old. These belonged to Dr. Sarah Martinez. She was one of the first permanent residents of Mars. She documented daily life in the early colony. Professor Thel opened the first journal reverently. His clawed fingers turned pages with surprising gentleness. Extraordinary. Look at this entry. She describes a dust storm that nearly destroyed the habitat. The fear, the uncertainty, but also the determination to survive. This emotional context. You cannot get this from official reports. That is why primary sources matter. Indeed, Thel continued reading. I have accessed the digital versions of these journals, but seeing the actual handwriting, the way she pressed harder on certain words when emotional, the small drawings she made in the margins, it provides insight that transcends mere words. They spent the afternoon together, James helping Thel navigate the collection, finding relevant materials, discussing the interpretation of historical documents. It was the kind of interaction that gave James's work meaning, the reason he had become a librarian in the first place. As Thel was leaving, he paused at the door. Librarian Chen, I want you to know, your work here matters. Even if others do not see it, you are preserving more than information. You are preserving connection to the past. Do not let anyone convince you otherwise. Thank you, Professor. That means a great deal. That evening, as James was closing up the collection for the night, Zara approached him. She had been working in the archives for 3 months now. Her initial skepticism had gradually transformed into genuine appreciation. Librarian, I have been thinking. In my training, they taught us that physical media is obsolete, that digital storage is superior in every way. But working here, I have realized that is not entirely true. There is value in physicality, in the tangible, in the permanent. What changed your mind? This. She held up the poetry book he had given her weeks ago. I have been reading it, not quickly, not efficiently, but slowly, savoring each poem, turning real pages, and I have found that the experience of reading a physical book is fundamentally different from reading a screen. It is more intentional, more intimate. Does that make sense? Perfect sense. That is exactly what I have been trying to explain to Director Kelvin for years. He will never understand. His species has no concept of physical information storage. They have been digital for their entire recorded history. To them, paper books are like using stone tools when you have molecular fabricators. True, but sometimes the old tools have advantages the new ones lack, Zara smiled. A gesture she had learned from humans. Her species did not naturally smile. I am beginning to understand that. 6 months into James's current posting at the Galactic Archives, something unprecedented happened. A routine maintenance update to the quantum core systems. A standard procedure performed thousands of times without incident. But this time, something went wrong. It started with a small glitch, a momentary flicker in the archive's access network. Researchers across the galaxy lost connection for 0.03 seconds. Then systems came back online. The maintenance team reported that the update had been successfully completed. Everything seemed normal. James was in the Human Heritage Collection, helping a Gorian graduate student research human agricultural history, when his personal communicator chimed with an emergency alert. All archival staff report to Central Operations immediately. Priority alert, Code 7. A Code 7 was a system-wide emergency. James had never seen one in his 12 years with the archives. He excused himself from the confused graduate student and hurried toward Central Operations. The Central Operations Center was chaos. Dozens of archival staff crowded around holographic displays, all showing the same alarming message. Data corruption detected. Error correction failed. System integrity compromised. Director Kelvin stood at the center of the room, his translucent form flickering rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation in Valorians. Report! What is happening? A Tarkeshi technician, his blue scales dark with stress, responded. Director, the maintenance update triggered a cascading quantum decoherence event. The error started in Sector 7, but it has spread to all 43 backup locations. We are experiencing massive data corruption across the entire network. That is impossible. The quantum error correction should prevent cascading failures. It should, but the update modified the error correction protocols. The modification contained a flaw, a fatal flaw. The error correction is now propagating the corruption instead of fixing it. Kelvin's form flickered so rapidly, he became almost invisible. How much data have we lost? The technician consulted his displays. His expression grew more horrified by the second. Director, we have lost everything. The room fell silent. Complete silence. As if every being present had stopped breathing simultaneously. Define everything. Kelvin's voice was barely a whisper. All quantum storage cores, all 43 backup sites, all redundant systems, total data loss, 10,000 years of accumulated knowledge, gone. We are attempting to recover from the pre-update backup. But that backup, it is also corrupted. The error propagated backward through the quantum entanglement. We have nothing. James felt his stomach drop. 10,000 years of knowledge, the recorded history of dozens of civilizations, scientific discoveries, literature, art, medical records, legal documents, everything that made up the Galactic Federation's cultural heritage, erased. How is that possible? Someone asked. The physics should not allow backward propagation through quantum entanglement. The modification to the error correction created a temporal loop in the quantum state. We do not fully understand it yet, but the effect is clear. Everything is gone. Kelvin turned slowly, looking at his assembled staff. What do we have left? Physical materials? Anything? Director. James heard himself speaking. His voice sounded distant, unreal. The Human Heritage Collection. Physical books, documents, maps, all still intact. Every eye in the room turned to him. Kelvin's form solidified, focused entirely on James. How much material are we talking about? Approximately 40,000 volumes, plus several thousand maps, manuscripts, and documents, spanning about 5,000 years of human history. It is not much compared to what we lost, but it is something. It is more than something. Librarian Chen, it is everything. Right now, your collection of primitive physical media is the only surviving archive of historical information in the entire Galactic Federation, the only intact historical record anywhere. The weight of that statement hit James like a physical blow. His small collection, the one that Director Kelvin had wanted to discard as redundant and wasteful, was now the most valuable repository of knowledge in the galaxy. We need to secure that collection immediately, Kelvin ordered. Maximum security. Nothing touches those books without authorization. Librarian Chen, you are hereby appointed as the Federation's chief archivist. Your primary responsibility is preserving that collection and helping us rebuild what we have lost. The next hours were frantic. Security teams surrounded the human heritage collection, establishing a perimeter that would make a military base jealous. Every book, every document, every scrap of paper was inventoried and secured. James worked alongside his security detail, explaining the significance of each item, how they should be handled, what needed the most careful protection. Zara stayed with him throughout, her multifaceted eyes wide with shock. Chief Archivist, what does this mean? For the galaxy? It means we have lost our past. Zara, everything we knew about history, about science, about ourselves, gone. We can rebuild from current knowledge. Scientists still remember their discoveries. Historians still remember some history, but the primary sources, the original documents, the detailed records, all gone. Except for these books. I used to think they were obsolete, wasteful. I am sorry. You thought what everyone thought, what I have been fighting against for years, that physical media was redundant, that digital was enough, but digital can be erased. Paper endures. The Galactic media learned of the catastrophe within hours. News broadcasts across the Federation reported the unprecedented loss. Historians, scientists, citizens, everyone was in shock. Cultures that had spent millennia recording their histories found those records simply gone, vanished as if they had never existed. But there was one small piece of hope: the Human Heritage Collection, preserved on paper, intact. Suddenly, everyone wanted access to those books, not just human history, but any fragment of history they contained, any reference to other species, any scrap of knowledge that might help fill the void. The Federation Council held an emergency session. James was summoned to testify. He stood before representatives from every member species, explaining what materials the collection contained, how they had been preserved, what could potentially be recovered. Chief Archivist Chen, the council speaker, a Zentari elder, addressed him formally. You maintained these physical records despite considerable opposition, despite being told they were obsolete and wasteful. Why? James thought carefully before answering. Council speaker, my grandfather was a librarian on Earth. Before humans joined the Federation, he taught me that information stored only in one format is vulnerable. He believed in redundancy, not just digital backups of digital files, but fundamentally different storage methods, physical and digital, organic and technological. He said that catastrophic data loss had happened before in human history, when the Library of Alexandria burned, when digital archives were wiped by viruses, and it would happen again. I never thought I would see it, but he was right. Your grandfather was wise, and you have done a great service by heeding his wisdom. The Council wishes to formally recognize your contribution, but more importantly, we need your expertise. We must rebuild, but we must rebuild properly, so this never happens again. Tell us, how do we do that? James took a deep breath. First, we need to preserve what we have. The Human Heritage Collection must be protected, copied, distributed, physical copies, not just digital. Second, we need to recover whatever knowledge still exists, interview experts, record their memories, create new primary sources before that knowledge is lost. Third, we need to establish new policies, requiring physical backups of critical information. We got lazy, we trusted too much in technology, we need balance over the following weeks. James's small collection became the center of the galaxy's attention. Scholars from every species descended on the archives, seeking any information relevant to their fields. The books were carefully digitized, but with strict controls, multiple independent storage systems, different technologies, and always, physical copies maintained. James organized teams of researchers. They worked through the collection methodically. Every book was examined, its contents analyzed, references to other species documented. Even a single paragraph mentioning Krethian culture or Valorian science was precious, a fragment of lost knowledge. Professor Thel, the elderly Krethian historian, became one of James's closest collaborators. Chief Archivist, look at this. Thel held up one of the journals he had been reading months earlier. Dr. Martinez mentions working with a Zentari scientist on atmospheric processing. She names him, describes his theories. This is recorded nowhere else now. This journal may be the only surviving documentation of that scientist's work. Mark it for priority digitization and flag it for the Zentari archives. They will want to know. I have found 17 similar references so far. Humans, it seems. were meticulous about documenting their collaborations with other species. Your books contain fragments of everyone's history, not just human history. This pattern repeated across the collection. Human historians had documented contact with other species. Human scientists had credited alien collaborators. Human journalists had written about galactic events. The Human Heritage Collection, meant to preserve only human culture, actually contained scattered references to the entire Federation's history. It was not much, not compared to what had been lost, but it was something. And right now, something was infinitely valuable. Zara worked tirelessly alongside James. Her initial skepticism had transformed into almost religious devotion to physical preservation. She became an expert in paper conservation, in proper handling techniques, in the creation of protective enclosures for fragile documents. "Chief Archivist," she said one day, "I have been thinking about my training. Everything I was taught about archival science. It was all wrong, or not wrong, but incomplete. We focused entirely on digital preservation. We never learned about physical media, about redundancy across different formats. We were arrogant, not arrogant, just overconfident. The technology was so good, so reliable, for so long, that everyone forgot it could fail. It should not have taken a catastrophe to teach us this lesson. Most important lessons are learned the hard way. Zara, the question is, do we learn from them, or do we forget and repeat the same mistakes?" The Federation Council established the Commission on Archival Reformation, with James as the lead consultant. The Commission's mandate was to rebuild the archives, but more importantly, to create new standards that would prevent another catastrophe. James worked with experts from every species, developing comprehensive policies. Every critical piece of information would require physical backup, not just digital redundancy. Actual physical copies, on paper, on metal, on crystal, on any stable medium that could survive without power or technology. Some resisted, arguing that physical storage was inefficient, expensive, unnecessary given improved error correction. But the recent catastrophe made those arguments hard to sustain. Director Kelvin, chastened by the disaster, became one of the policy's strongest supporters. "I was wrong. Librarian Chief Archivist. I dismissed your concerns. I called physical media wasteful. I nearly convinced the Council to eliminate your collection entirely. If I had succeeded, we would have lost everything. Truly everything. I apologize. Director, you believed what you were taught, what every expert told you. The failure was not yours alone. It was systemic. We all believed too strongly in the infallibility of our technology. Nevertheless, I should have listened. You tried to warn me. 17 times. You said the books were backup. I laughed at you. You were not wrong to trust the technology. You were only wrong to trust it exclusively. That is the lesson here. Not that technology is bad, but that redundancy, true redundancy across different systems, is essential. The rebuilding effort took years. The Federation established a new institution, the Galactic Archives of Physical Media, with facilities on 43 different worlds. Each facility maintained physical copies of critical information in multiple formats, tended by trained archivists who understood the value and care of physical media. James trained the first generation of these new archivists, teaching them not just about books, but about the philosophy behind physical preservation, about redundancy, about humility in the face of technological confidence. The Human Heritage Collection expanded dramatically. Other species donated their own physical artifacts. Crethians contributed ancient stone tablets. Valorians provided crystalline memory shards that stored data without power. Gorians shared metal plates etched with their earliest written language. Zentari offered organic matrices that encoded information in biological structures. The new archives became a monument to diversity, not just in the species represented, but in the methods of information storage. Proof that redundancy meant more than just multiple copies. It meant multiple formats, multiple technologies, multiple approaches. The recovery effort required unprecedented coordination across the galaxy. While the quantum cores had lost their data, the physical infrastructure remained intact. The question was what to rebuild and how to prioritize. James found himself chairing emergency meetings with the Federation's top scientists, historians, government officials. Everyone wanted their field's knowledge restored first. Medical research, engineering specifications, historical records, legal codes. agricultural data. Every field was critical. Every loss was devastating. We cannot rebuild everything at once, James explained to a room full of desperate department heads. We do not have the resources or the time. We need to prioritize. Medical knowledge must come first. Dr. Yalis, a Valorian physician, argued passionately. Lives are at stake. We have lost treatment protocols, drug formulations, surgical techniques. People are dying because their doctors cannot access medical databases, but without engineering specifications, countered Chief Engineer Gormith, a massive Gorian. Our infrastructure will fail. Power plants, life support systems, spacecraft, all depend on technical documentation. We are operating on memory, and memory fades. Both arguments have merit, James said. But we need a systematic approach. First priority, current operational needs, medical protocols currently in use, engineering specs for critical systems, anything people need right now to survive. Second priority, foundational knowledge, basic science, mathematics, physics, the knowledge that allows us to derive everything else. Third priority, historical and cultural records. What makes us who we are? You put history last? Professor Thel looked wounded. After everything we have lost? Not last. Third. And third does not mean unimportant. It means we handle immediate survival first, then foundational knowledge, then cultural heritage. All three are essential, but they must be addressed in order of urgency. The room debated for hours, but eventually consensus emerged around James's framework. The recovery effort would proceed in phases, with clear priorities, and with James coordinating the overall effort. The work was monumental. Teams of experts worked around the clock, interviewing specialists, recording their knowledge, creating new documentation from memory and current practice. Every medical procedure performed in hospitals was now recorded in detail, creating new protocol documents. Every engineering repair generated a new technical manual. Every court case established new legal precedent that was carefully documented. But gaps remained, huge gaps. A senior human engineer, Dr. Patricia Okonkwo, discovered a critical problem 3 months into the recovery. Chief Archivist, we have a crisis. We are trying to rebuild the specifications for Type 7 fusion reactors. These power half the space stations in the Federation. But no one alive has the complete technical knowledge. The original designers died 2 centuries ago, and their research, all of it, was stored only digitally. Are the reactors still functioning? Yes, for now, but they require maintenance. And without the complete specifications, we cannot safely perform that maintenance. We are estimating 5 years before we start seeing catastrophic failures. Maybe 10, James thought furiously. The designers, were they human? 3 humans, 2 Krethians, 1 Zentari. Why? Humans write things down, even when they have digital copies. It is a cultural habit. Do we know where these designers lived? Where they worked? The lead designer, Dr. Robert Mendez, worked at the Titan Research Station. He retired to Earth, but he died 40 years ago. Did he have family? Descendants? Patricia checked her records. A grandson, living in Brazil, a teacher, not an engineer. Contact him. Ask if his grandfather left any papers, notes, journals, anything physical. Patricia looked skeptical. You think a personal journal will contain reactor specifications? I think scientists often keep notes, calculations, ideas, even rough sketches, physical notes that never got digitized. It is a long shot, but it is worth trying. The grandson, a man named Carlos Mendez, was baffled by the request, but he searched his grandfather's belongings. In an old storage unit, he found 3 boxes of notebooks, his grandfather's personal research journals, filled with calculations, diagrams, technical notes. The journals did not contain complete specifications, but they contained enough: the original thought process, the key calculations, the critical design decisions. With this foundation, the engineering team could reconstruct the full specifications. The crisis was averted. This is why we preserve, James told his team, not just the official records, but the personal notes, the rough drafts, the marginalia. Sometimes the most important knowledge is recorded in the most informal way. This pattern repeated across the recovery effort. Personal papers, family archives, private collections, all became invaluable sources of lost knowledge. James organized teams to search for such materials, to contact the descendants of scientists and scholars, to recover any physical documents that might have survived. A Zentari family donated their grandmother's research notes on early agricultural bioengineering. Those notes helped restore critical food production techniques. A Crethian monastery provided ancient philosophical texts that had been copied by hand for generations, preserving ideas that had vanished from digital archives. A Gorian mining collective had maintained physical maps of asteroid fields, including ore deposits and hazard zones. That data was now irreplaceable. Knowledge lives in unexpected places, James told a gathering of archivists. In attics and basements, in family treasuries and personal collections. We must find it, preserve it, before it is lost forever. The search for physical records became a Federation-wide effort. Citizens were encouraged to check their homes, their ancestors' belongings, anything that might contain useful information. The response was overwhelming. Millions of documents flowed into collection centers. Most were personal, family histories, letters, photographs, but scattered among them were gems, technical notes, scientific observations, historical accounts. Each document was carefully examined, cataloged, preserved. The process was slow, labor-intensive, but necessary. This was the only way to recover what had been lost. Zara proved invaluable in this work. Her Zentari visual capabilities allowed her to quickly scan documents, identify their content, assess their significance. She trained teams of document processors, teaching them what to look for, how to handle fragile materials, how to prioritize for preservation. Chief Archivist, Zara reported after 6 months of recovery work. We have processed over 14 million documents. We have recovered approximately 3% of the lost knowledge. At this rate, full recovery will take 200 years. James had expected that. 200 years is acceptable, as long as we do not lose anything more, and as long as we maintain what we recover, both digitally and physically. The new protocols are holding. Every piece of recovered information is stored in at least 5 different ways: digital quantum cores, crystalline storage, biological matrices, metal etching, and paper printing. If one system fails, the others remain. Good, that is what we need. Redundancy, true redundancy. But the recovery effort faced obstacles beyond just the scope of work. Some species were reluctant to share their remaining knowledge, fearing that others would gain advantage. Some corporations claimed proprietary rights over information, even in the face of catastrophe. Some religious groups believed the data loss was divine punishment and should not be reversed. James found himself negotiating with these various factions, convincing them that shared knowledge benefited everyone, that hoarding information in crisis was self-defeating, that rebuilding civilization required cooperation. The Crethian government was particularly difficult. They had lost their entire historical archive, but they had a tradition of oral history, knowledge passed down through trained memorizers. They initially refused to record this knowledge, arguing that writing it down would violate sacred traditions. James traveled to the Crethian homeworld, met with their council of elders. He spent a week in discussions, learning about their culture, their beliefs, their fears. Honored elders, he finally argued. I respect your traditions, but consider this. Your oral traditions exist because, before writing, it was the only way to preserve knowledge. The tradition served a purpose: preservation. Now, you face a new crisis. Your people are scattered across the galaxy. If something happens to your memorizers, if disease or disaster strikes, your entire history could be lost. Again, is the form of preservation more important than preservation itself? The eldest, an ancient Crethian named Vexoth, considered this. You argue that tradition must adapt to serve its original purpose, that preservation matters more than the method of preservation. Yes, exactly. Your oral traditions are beautiful, sacred. I would never suggest abandoning them, but adding written records, as backup, as insurance, this does not diminish the tradition. It protects it. After much deliberation, the council agreed. They would allow their oral histories to be recorded, not to replace the tradition, but to supplement it. The written records would be sealed, accessed only in emergency, but they would exist, and their existence would ensure the knowledge survived. This compromise became a model. Other species with similar concerns agreed to record their knowledge with various protections. The recovery effort expanded, not just technically, but culturally, building trust, creating frameworks for sharing knowledge across boundaries. The rebuilding effort revealed something unexpected, something profound. In the process of recovering lost knowledge, the galaxy discovered how much had been forgotten even before the catastrophe, how much traditional knowledge had been displaced by digital convenience. An elderly Valorian farmer, contacted during the agricultural knowledge recovery, demonstrated cultivation techniques that had been practiced for millennia on his world, but which had vanished from the digital archives decades ago, replaced by industrial farming methods. His techniques, it turned out, were more sustainable, more adaptable to different conditions. Knowledge that had been dismissed as primitive now proved valuable. A Gorian metalworker showed engineers ancient forging methods that created stronger, more durable materials than modern fabrication. The knowledge had survived in his family, passed from parent to child, never digitized because it was considered obsolete. Now engineers studied these methods, integrated them with modern technology, created new hybrid approaches better than either alone. A Tarkashi musician taught traditional songs that contained encoded astronomical data, star positions, orbital periods, celestial events, knowledge preserved in music for thousands of years, because her people knew that songs survive when documents do not, and that knowledge embedded in art is remembered when facts are forgotten. We are not just recovering what we lost, Professor Thel observed. We are discovering what we had forgotten we lost. The catastrophe has revealed how much. Knowledge was displaced by our confidence in digital perfection. James nodded. That may be the real lesson here. Not just that technology can fail, but that in adopting new methods, we too readily abandoned old ones. We should have maintained both, the digital for convenience, the traditional for resilience. This realization sparked a cultural renaissance across the Federation. Traditional knowledge, once dismissed as quaint or obsolete, was now valued, documented, preserved, not as museum pieces, but as living practices. Alongside modern methods, craftspeople were sought out, asked to document their techniques. Oral historians were recorded, their stories preserved. Artists explained the cultural knowledge embedded in their work. Farmers shared seeds and growing methods passed down through generations. Builders demonstrated construction techniques that predated modern materials. The archives of physical media expanded to include not just books and documents, but recordings of traditional practices, video documentation of techniques, audio recordings of oral traditions, physical samples of traditional materials and tools. The archives became living repositories, not just of information, but of practice. James established the Fellowship of Traditional Knowledge, an organization dedicated to identifying, documenting, and preserving knowledge held by practitioners, not scholars, not scientists, but people who did things, who made things, who knew things through practice rather than study. The first fellow was a human craftsman named Kenji Yamamoto, a fifth-generation bookbinder. He knew techniques for papermaking, binding, preservation that had been practiced in his family for over 400 years, techniques that had never been digitized because they were considered artisanal, not technical. My great-great-grandfather told me, Kenji explained, that books must be made to last, that beauty and durability are inseparable, that a well-made book can survive centuries. He learned from his grandfather, who learned from his grandfather. The knowledge passes through hands, through practice, not through reading. I can show you, but I cannot fully explain it. You must feel the paper, experience the binding, know it through doing. Under the fellowship program, Kenji taught a new generation of bookbinders, not just humans, but members of every species. Each adapted the techniques to their own physiology, their own materials. The result was a flowering of bookmaking across the galaxy. Books became precious again, not obsolete objects, but valued creations. The fellowship expanded to include traditional medicine practitioners, ancient agricultural experts, classical craftspeople, indigenous knowledge keepers, anyone who maintained skills that had been displaced by modern technology. These people became teachers, sharing knowledge that might otherwise be lost. Not everyone approved. Some academics argued that traditional knowledge was unscientific, that it should not be elevated alongside empirical research, that the fellowship was promoting superstition and backwardness. James addressed these concerns at a symposium on knowledge preservation. Traditional knowledge is not opposed to scientific knowledge. It is complementary. Science gives us understanding through controlled experiment. Tradition gives us wisdom through accumulated experience. Both are valid. Both are valuable. Consider traditional medicine. A healer might not know the biochemical mechanism of why a plant extract works, but they know from centuries of use that it does work. Science can then investigate and explain the mechanism. But the traditional knowledge provided the starting point, the hypothesis to test. This is collaboration, not competition. Or consider traditional building techniques. An old builder might not calculate stress loads mathematically, but they know from experience how thick a wall must be, how to arrange stones for stability. Modern engineering can explain why their methods work, can optimize them, but the traditional knowledge provides proven solutions that have survived the test of time. The catastrophe taught us that redundancy is essential, not just in storage methods, but in knowledge itself. We need scientific knowledge and traditional knowledge, digital preservation and physical preservation, modern techniques and ancient wisdom, all together, creating a robust foundation for civilization. The academic community gradually accepted this perspective. Traditional knowledge was recognized as valid, worthy of preservation alongside scientific knowledge. Universities established programs for studying and teaching traditional practices. Research projects documented indigenous knowledge. Collaborative efforts brought together practitioners and scholars. The recovery effort also revealed vulnerabilities in the Federation's current knowledge base. Entire fields of study had become so specialized, so dependent on accumulated digital data, that only a handful of experts truly understood them. And when the data was lost, so was much of the understanding. This became apparent in the field of xenobiology, the study of non-Federation alien life. Researchers had cataloged millions of species across thousands of worlds, all stored digitally. When that data was lost, so was most of the knowledge. Only a few dozen xenobiologists remembered enough to reconstruct basic taxonomies, detailed studies of ecosystems, behavioral patterns, evolutionary relationships, all gone. Dr. Amara Stone, a human xenobiologist who had spent 40 years studying life on frontier worlds, became key to the recovery effort, but she was frustrated by what she found. Chief Archivist, we have a problem. Xenobiology has become too centralized, too dependent on the central database. Young researchers never learned to do field work. They analyzed data. They did not go into ecosystems. They did not observe directly. When the database was lost, they were helpless. What do you suggest? We need to return to foundational practices, field work, direct observation, detailed note-taking, drawing specimens, creating physical samples, the old methods that produced the knowledge in the first place. But we have a generation of scientists who were never trained in these methods. James saw the larger pattern. Xenobiology was not unique. Many fields had similar problems. This is true across disciplines. We need to rebuild foundational skills, not just recover lost data, but recover lost practices. This led to the creation of the Foundational Skills Initiative, a program to train scientists in the basic methodologies of their fields, methods that had been displaced by reliance on advanced technology and digital databases. Biologists learned to use microscopes, to prepare samples, to draw what they observed. Astronomers learned to use optical telescopes, to calculate orbital mechanics by hand, to map the sky without computer assistance. Chemists learned traditional laboratory techniques, conducting experiments without automated systems. At first, many scientists resisted. They saw it as regression, a waste of valuable research time. But the results spoke for themselves. Scientists who learned foundational skills made better use of technology when they had it. They could troubleshoot problems, understand limitations, design better experiments. They could function when technology failed. Dr. Stone established a field station on a wilderness world, where xenobiology students spent 6 months without access to digital databases or advanced equipment, just basic tools, notebooks, and their own observations. You will learn to see, she told her students, not just to look at data displays, but to actually see organisms in their environment, to notice patterns, to ask questions based on observation, to develop intuition about biological systems. These skills cannot be learned from a database. They must be practiced. The students struggled at first. They were used to instant access to information, to computer analysis, to technological support. Without these aids, they felt blind, helpless. But gradually, they adapted. They learned to trust their own observations, to draw conclusions from direct evidence, to think critically without algorithmic assistance. One student, a Zentari named Rix, made a significant discovery. She noticed that a particular species of plant only bloomed after a specific insect visited. She observed, made notes, drew detailed illustrations. She hypothesized a symbiotic relationship, tested it through careful experiment, confirmed it. "I would never have noticed this from database entries," she told Dr. Stone. "The pattern was there, but I had to see it, to watch it happen, to understand it directly. The database would have shown me facts, but not understanding." "Exactly," Dr. Stone smiled. "Facts and understanding are not the same thing. The catastrophe took our facts, but it cannot take understanding if we develop it directly. This is why foundational skills matter." The Foundational Skills Initiative expanded across the Federation. Every scientific field, every technical discipline, every area of scholarship, all established training programs in basic methodologies, programs that did not rely on technology, that taught people to think, to observe, to analyze, to create knowledge, not just consume it. James watched these developments with satisfaction. The catastrophe had been terrible, but it had forced the galaxy to reconsider its relationship with technology, to recognize that convenience should not completely replace capability, that tools should enhance human ability, not replace it. This philosophy extended beyond science, into education generally. Schools across the Federation changed their curricula. Students still learned to use advanced technology, but they also learned without it. They practiced mental math, they wrote by hand, they drew, they built, they learned to solve problems with minimal resources. A new generation grew up understanding both the power and the limitations of technology. They were comfortable with digital tools, but not dependent on them. They could adapt, improvise, function in situations where their ancestors would have been helpless. 15 years after the catastrophe, the Federation conducted a comprehensive assessment. How much knowledge had been recovered? How complete was the rebuilding? What gaps remained? The results were sobering. Approximately 40% of the lost knowledge had been recovered or reconstructed. Another 30% was partially recovered, fragmentary, incomplete, but useful. The remaining 30% was simply gone, lost forever. Knowledge that had existed only in digital form, with no living experts to remember it, no physical records to consult, gone as completely as if it had never existed. The lost knowledge was not evenly distributed. Some fields were nearly complete: medicine, engineering, basic sciences, the practical knowledge needed for survival. This had been prioritized, recovered quickly. Other fields were devastated: obscure historical periods, rare languages, extinct species, minor artistic movements, the detailed knowledge that made civilization rich, but was not immediately necessary for survival. Much of this was lost forever. James presented these findings to the Federation Council. His report was blunt, honest. "We have recovered what we needed to survive, but we have lost much of what made us who we were. The details, the nuances, the minor stories, these are gone. We can rebuild facts, but we cannot rebuild the cultural richness that accumulated over 10,000 years. That is lost." The council chamber was silent. Everyone understood. They had survived, but they had been diminished. A piece of their collective soul had been erased. However, James continued, "We can ensure this never happens again. We have learned. We have changed. Our new archival systems, our commitment to physical preservation, our emphasis on foundational skills and traditional knowledge, all of this makes us more resilient, more capable, better prepared. We paid a terrible price for this lesson, but we have learned it. Now we must maintain what we have learned, for all time." The council voted unanimously to establish the catastrophe anniversary as a day of remembrance, a day when every citizen of the Federation was reminded of what was lost, what was saved, and why preservation matters. Schools taught the history. Archives held open houses. The Human Heritage Collection, where it all began, became a pilgrimage site, a place where people came to understand. 5 years after the catastrophe, the Galactic Archives held a memorial ceremony, honoring what had been lost and celebrating what had been saved. Representatives from every Federation species attended. The ceremony took place in the Human Heritage Collection, now expanded to fill an entire complex. the Federation Council speaker addressed the gathered assembly. 3 years ago, we suffered the greatest loss of knowledge in recorded history. 10,000 years of accumulated wisdom, gone in an instant. We thought we had built the perfect system, impregnable, infallible, eternal. We were wrong. But in our darkest moment, we discovered something unexpected. A human librarian, working in a small collection of primitive books, had been right all along. Physical media is not obsolete, redundancy is not wasteful, and trust in any single system, no matter how advanced, is dangerous. Today, we remember what we lost, but we also celebrate what we saved. And we honor the individual whose stubbornness, whose refusal to conform to consensus, whose dedication to an old-fashioned principle saved us from total darkness. Chief Archivist James Chen, please step forward. James walked to the podium, uncomfortable with the attention, but recognizing the importance of the moment. The speaker continued. Chief Archivist Chen, the Federation Council wishes to present you with the Medal of Cultural Preservation, the highest civilian honor we can bestow. Your grandfather taught you that catastrophic data loss would happen again. You listened, you prepared, you maintained redundancy when everyone else abandoned it, and when disaster struck, your preparation saved us. On behalf of the entire Federation, thank you. The applause was deafening, but James raised his hand for quiet. Council Speaker, honorable delegates, I am grateful for this recognition, but I want to be clear about something. I did not save us. Paper saved us. Physical media saved us. The principle of true redundancy saved us. I was just the person who happened to be in the right place with the right training at the right time. My grandfather taught me these lessons, but he learned them from librarians before him, who learned from librarians before them. This knowledge, this understanding that information must be preserved in multiple formats. It is ancient human wisdom, developed over centuries of losing libraries to fire, flood, war, technological failure. We learned the hard way, many times, that nothing lasts forever unless you work to preserve it. The galaxy forgot this lesson because your technology was so good for so long. But the lesson remains true. Technology will always eventually fail. It may take centuries. It may take millennia. But nothing is truly permanent except permanence itself. And the only way to achieve permanence is through redundancy. True redundancy. Across time, across formats, across systems. He gestured to the shelves around them, now holding not just human books, but physical media from every species. This collection is not just about preserving the past. It is about preparing for the next catastrophe, because there will be a next catastrophe. Maybe not in our lifetimes, maybe not for 1,000 years, but someday, something will fail, and when it does, these physical records will be here, waiting, ready to help rebuild. So accept this medal not for me, but for every librarian, every archivist, every scholar who has ever fought to preserve knowledge in the face of those who called it obsolete. For everyone who understood that the old ways have value, that physical permanence matters, that redundancy is not wasteful but essential. The applause resumed, longer and louder. But James stepped away from the podium. He walked to a nearby shelf. He pulled down a book, one of the oldest in the collection, a history text from 21st century Earth. He opened it to a marked page, and he read aloud. Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. This was written by a human philosopher named George Santayana over 1,000 years ago. We forgot his warning, we lost our past, and we almost condemned ourselves to darkness. Let us not forget again. In the years that followed, the new archival system became standard across the Federation. Every library, every archive, every repository of knowledge maintained both digital and physical copies. The profession of physical archivist, once considered obsolete, became one of the most respected careers in the galaxy. James continued his work at the Galactic Archives, training new generations of archivists, expanding the collection, developing better preservation techniques. But he never forgot that small room where it all began, the Human Heritage Collection, with its wooden shelves and paper books, the collection that everyone wanted to eliminate, until it became the only thing standing between civilization and darkness. Zara, his former assistant, now directed her own archive facility on a Zentari colony world. She had become one of the Federation's leading experts on cross-species information preservation. She corresponded regularly with James, sharing discoveries, debating methodologies. She often thanked him for changing her understanding of archives, for teaching her that the old ways had value. Professor Thel completed his magnum opus, a comprehensive history of early human colonization, drawing heavily on the journals and documents James had preserved. The work became a model for how to reconstruct history from fragmentary sources, how to honor what remained while acknowledging what was lost. Director Kelvin retired from the Galactic archives, but before he left, he made a pilgrimage to the Human Heritage Collection. He found James cataloging a recent donation of 23rd century newspapers. Chief Archivist, I wanted to speak with you before I leave. Director, it is good to see you. I want to apologize. Again, properly. I spent years trying to eliminate this collection. I thought you were sentimental, inefficient, clinging to outdated methods. I was convinced I was right, that my understanding of archival science was superior to yours. You were not entirely wrong. Digital storage is efficient, powerful, impressive. Your confidence in the technology was not unreasonable. But I was absolutely wrong where it mattered most. You understood something I did not. That efficiency is not the only value. That redundancy has worth beyond convenience. That some things, some approaches, some methods, deserve preservation not because they are better, but because they are different. And that difference itself has value. Kelvin reached out with one translucent appendage, gently touching a nearby book. These objects, I used to see them as obsolete waste. Now I see them as precious, irreplaceable, not because of what they contain, but because of what they represent. Permanence, stability, independence from power and technology. I wish I had understood that earlier. Director, we all learned the lesson together, at terrible cost, but we learned. That is what matters. 20 years after the catastrophe, James stood once again in the original Human Heritage Collection room. It had been preserved exactly as it was, a memorial to the moment when everything changed. The wooden shelves, the leather-bound books, the smell of old paper, all maintained carefully. A new generation of students visited regularly to see where the archives were saved, to understand why physical media matters, to learn the lessons that had been so painfully taught. James, now in his 60s, still led occasional tours. Today's group included students from 6 different species, all training to be archivists, all learning about physical preservation. This room saved the Federation, James told them. Not because it was advanced, not because it used the latest technology, but because it was simple, physical, permanent. When everything else failed, these books remained, unchanged, accessible, real. A young Gorian student raised one of his 4 hands. Chief Archivist, in our training, we learn about quantum storage, crystalline matrices, biological encoding, all the advanced preservation methods, but we also learn about paper, stone, metal, clay, the simple methods. Why are the simple methods still important? Because simplicity is robust. A quantum storage core requires power, maintenance, specific environmental conditions. It is extraordinary when it works, but fragile when systems fail. A book requires nothing. No power, no maintenance. It just is. It can survive for centuries in a box, waiting, ready. When the complex systems fail, the simple ones endure. But simple methods store less information, less efficiently. True, which is why we use both. The advanced systems for everyday access, for search and analysis, for convenience, but the simple systems as backup, as insurance, as permanent record. Both have value. Both are necessary. The lesson is not to abandon technology, but to never abandon simplicity. He picked up a book from the nearest shelf, one of his favorites, a collection of poetry from early Mars colonization. This book is 400 years old. It has survived interstellar travel, multiple owners, different storage conditions, and it still works perfectly. I can open it and read the words. No power required, no computer needed, just me and the page. That is the power of simplicity. That is what we preserve. The students listened intently. They had grown up in the post-catastrophe era. They understood the value of physical media in a way previous generations had not. They would be the ones to maintain the new archival standards, to ensure the lessons learned were not forgotten. After the tour, James sat alone in the reading room, the same wooden chairs and tables from 20 years ago. He thought about his grandfather, about the lessons passed down through generations of librarians, about how close they had come to losing everything. His communicator chimed, a message from the Federation Council. They were establishing a new position, Galactic Keeper of Memory. someone to oversee all preservation efforts across the Federation, to ensure standards were maintained, to serve as guardian of the past. They were offering the position to James. He considered declining. He was not young anymore. The responsibility would be enormous. But then he thought about his grandfather, about the trust placed in him, about the students he had just taught. He accepted. The role kept him traveling across the Federation, visiting archives, inspecting preservation methods, training staff. Everywhere he went, he saw the same transformation. Physical media, once dismissed as obsolete, now celebrated as essential. Archivists, once undervalued, now recognized as guardians of civilization itself. On a visit to a new archive on a Valorian colony world, the director showed James their collection with obvious pride. "Chief Archivist, look, we have stone tablets from the founding era, crystalline storage from the technological age, and now paper books, metal plates, ceramic tiles, every format, every method, all preserved together. This is excellent work, Director. You understand the principle, diversity in preservation, like diversity in biology. It creates resilience, strength, survival. We learned from you, from the Human Heritage Collection, from what you saved. This archive exists because you showed us the way." James smiled. "I showed you one way, but every species has contributed. Every culture has added their own preservation methods. What we have built together is far greater than what I alone could have created. That is the real lesson. Not that humans were right and everyone else was wrong, but that we all have wisdom to share. We all have methods worth preserving. Together, we create something resilient enough to survive anything." 30 years after the catastrophe, the Federation held a gathering of all the chief archivists from across the galaxy. Hundreds of archivists from dozens of species, all gathered to share knowledge, to coordinate preservation efforts, to ensure the lessons of the catastrophe were never forgotten. James, now quite elderly, gave the opening address. "Colleagues, friends, fellow guardians of memory, when I began my career, I was a librarian in a small collection of obsolete books. Everyone told me my work was pointless, wasteful, unnecessary. I was mocked for clinging to primitive methods, for refusing to abandon physical media. Then came the catastrophe, and suddenly, my obsolete collection was everything, the only surviving historical record, the foundation upon which we rebuilt. It was not supposed to be that way. It should not have been necessary, but it was. We have spent 3 decades rebuilding, creating new systems, better systems, systems with true redundancy, with physical backups, with diversity of preservation methods. We have learned the lesson, but lessons fade with time. Future generations will not remember the catastrophe as vividly as we do. They will be tempted by efficiency, by convenience, by the latest technology that promises perfect preservation. Our job, all of us in this room, is to ensure they do not forget, to maintain the standards we have built, to preserve not just information, but the principle of preservation itself, to remember that technology will always eventually fail, and when it does, the simple methods, the physical media, the redundant backups, these will be what saves us. We are not just archivists, we are guardians of civilization, of memory, of the past that makes the future possible. This is sacred work, vital work. Never forget that. Never let others forget it. And never, ever, let anyone convince you that redundancy is wasteful or that the old ways are obsolete, because someday, somewhere, the new ways will fail, and the old ways will be all that remains. The assembled archivists stood, applauding, but more than that, committing themselves to the work, to the principle, to the eternal vigilance required to preserve civilization's memory. James Chen retired shortly after that gathering. He returned to Earth, to the small town where he had grown up, where his grandfather had been the town librarian. That library still stood, still functioned, still maintained physical books alongside digital access. James volunteered there, just as his grandfather had done in his final years. He helped children learn to read, taught them about books, about the pleasure of turning physical pages, about the smell of paper and the weight of knowledge in your hands. One day, a young girl asked him, "Mr. Chen, why do we still have these old books? Everything is on the computer." James smiled. The same question he had heard countless times. Because computers can fail, but books, if you take care of them, books last forever. See this book? He pulled down an ancient volume. This was printed over 800 years ago, before we went to space, before we met other species, before we had computers, and it still works. I can still read it. That is the magic of books. But what if there is a fire or a flood? That is why we have many copies, in many places. So if one library burns, the books exist in other libraries. We call it redundancy. It means having backups, and backups of backups. So knowledge is never lost. The girl thought about this. You really like books. I love books. They saved the galaxy once, and they might need to save it again someday. So we keep them. We preserve them. We pass them to the next generation. Will you help? Will you be a guardian of books? The girl nodded seriously. I will. James Chen died peacefully in his sleep at the age of 89. The funeral was attended by dignitaries from across the Federation, but also by the people of his small town, by the children he had taught, by the librarians he had trained, by everyone whose life he had touched. The Federation declared a day of remembrance, honoring not just James, but all the archivists, librarians, and guardians of memory throughout history, who had preserved knowledge when others would have let it vanish, who had maintained redundancy when others called it wasteful, who had trusted in simple physical permanence when others trusted only in advanced technology. In archives across the galaxy, physical and digital, his name was recorded, his contributions documented, his lessons preserved for future generations who would need to remember. That technology is wonderful, but not infallible. That efficiency is valuable, but not everything. That the old ways have worth, not because they are old, but because they are proven, tested, reliable. And in a small room at the Galactic Archives, the original human heritage collection remained, exactly as James had kept it. Wooden shelves, paper books, the smell of age and dust, a monument to the man who refused to give up the past, and in doing so, saved the future. On the reading table, a simple plaque with words James had chosen himself. These books were called obsolete. They were nearly discarded as wasteful. They saved civilization when everything else failed. Never forget that the newest technology is not always the best, and the old ways have value that transcends convenience. Preserve with humility, remember with gratitude, and maintain redundancy, always, and beneath that. A quote from his grandfather, passed down through generations of librarians, now immortalized for all species, all times, all future ages to remember. A book can survive anything, a database, only until the power fails. The simple truth, preserved in the simplest way, on paper, in a book, waiting, ready, for the next time the galaxy would need it, because there would be a next time. There always was, and when that time came, the books would be there, patient, permanent, physical, proof that the old analog librarian had been right all along.